Hi, everybody. This is Brian Judd. I'm the Executive Director of the Association of Publishers for Special Sales, and welcome you to our webinar tonight by Carol Topp about how to start a publishing business for the self-published author. And just as a little background about me, I am the Executive Director, as I said. This is being brought to you by APPS and the Connecticut Authors and Publishers Association, of which I am also the founder. Had a lot of experience writing and marketing, but also as a business person. I started my business with my first book. I really looked at it as something that instead of just writing a book and selling a book, I really wanted to start a business, and that was over 20 years ago, and it's lasted this long. So it's been a real trek, and I probably would have done a lot better had I listened or had I known about Carol back then. At any rate, I will introduce Carol. She is the speaker tonight. Carol is the author of Business Tips and Taxes for Writers. Through her writing, speaking, and consulting, Carol converts tax rules and business language into clear, easy to understand English for readers. She has authored 11 books and is a contributing author in Writer's Digest 2015 Writer's Market and the Writer's Guide to Self-Publishing. Carol also hosts a podcast, The Dollars and Cents Show, and Carol lives in Cincinnati with her husband and two daughters, where she enjoys walking, painting, good conversations with friends, and books. Carol, thank you very much for being our speaker tonight, and we welcome you back. I know you've been here before, and I thank you very much again for coming back. It's a great topic. So I'll turn this over to you. It's all yours.
You're welcome. Thank you. I am trying to find. You're seeing my desktop. Let's see. Here we go. Thank you, Brian. I'm getting used to this. Yeah, this is the third webinar I think I've done. I'm getting a little bit of an echo. I don't know why. Not too bad. I'll keep talking. I did one on business tips for writers, and then one on taxes. That one was very popular. And again, if you attended those, you should have the link, right? Like Brian said, you always get the link after you've registered. I think someone records them too and puts them on YouTube. But anyway, this presentation of this webinar tonight is not going to be about how to get published. It's not going to be about publishing your book. It's not going to be about writing your book. It's going to be about the business aspects, how to set up a business, and particularly for the self-published author. Okay. I think we'll just go ahead and get started. I'm still getting a little bit of that echo, Brian. Do you know why?
Are you on the phone or the?
No, I am not. No, okay, no, I'm using a headset, but I'll keep going. It only bothers me, not the rest of you. Just hearing myself just a little. I think it's gone now, so that's good. Okay.
Sounds fine.
We're going to start. This is what we're going to cover. And like Brian said, I'm going to take some breaks because I want to let you guys ask questions. And of course, you'll type them in and Brian will read them off to me. So we'll take 2 breaks. But first, we're going to talk about why does a self-published author even need a publishing business? Why do you need a business?
Carol, may I interrupt for a moment here?
Yes, please.
We're getting some comments that people can hear some feedback and squeaking.
Oh, darn.
So you are on your mic and speakers.
And feedback. Yeah, I'm on a headset. Remember how we tested that? Let me see. Yeah. Maybe if I turning down the volume, does that help? Let me try something else on my headset here. Maybe I'm talking too loud for folks too. I'm too close to I'm going to turn down my microphone. See if that helps a little bit.
So okay, you're doing fine now. It sounds perfect.
Okay, does that sound better, everybody?
Now.
Maybe I'm
yep.
too enthusiastic.
Good job. Whatever you did, it worked, Carol. Thank you.
Okay, it was turning down. Let's see. Start it again. Okay, there we go. Okay, so why do we need a publishing business, and what do I need to do first? And then what can wait until later? Later being months, even years after you've been publishing and been a self-published author. And sprinkled throughout, there's going to be lots of tips and advice. And of course, as you ask questions, you'll get more tips and advice. Okay, so let's dive in. Well, why do you need a publishing business? Basically, you could write a book. You can upload it to some distributor like a CreateSpace or Kindle Direct Publishing or something like that, without ever establishing a business separate from you. It can just be you, the author. But I think if you establish a publishing business as kind of a separate entity, and I'm going to talk about, of course, how you do that as a separate entity with a name, it lends certainly more respect to you as an author, slash publisher, as well as legitimacy to the fact that you are truly pursuing a business. You are a professional. You're not a hobby writer anymore. If you're listening to this, you're probably not a hobby writer. You're taking this seriously as a business. It's also, I think it's a good indicator that your business will be successful because you're taking it more seriously as a business. And ultimately, if you set up a separate business, again, I'll talk about how you do that, separate from you as just an individual, it's actually easier to prepare your taxes, whether you do it yourself or get a professional, if you have that separate business identity. I think you start thinking about your business separately as an entity into itself. And that's, I think, ultimately what helps that business success. You understand what I mean? So for example, if you're mixing all your business income and expenses in your personal checking account, it's a little hard for you to see, have I been successful, or what brings income in? Is it article writing, or is it publishing, or is it using a service like Brian provides with special sales or something like that? You'll start to see, where's my income coming from, where my expenses are going. That's what makes a business successful, when you are keeping a pulse on how's my business doing. If all your money is intermingled with, the grocery bills and the mortgage, it's harder to see that. So that's why I encourage having a separate business entity, and ultimately, well, hopefully very quickly, a separate checking account. So let's get into a little bit of the nitty-gritty, shall we? What do you need to do first? And this is first, whether you've got the book published or whether you're still writing your first book, or you're thinking about starting a publishing business, making this a business. What do you need to do first? Well, okay, I'm going to give you what I call my super simple method, which is go stand in front of a mirror and say, I am a publisher. And that's really all it takes. Here in the United States, it's actually incredibly easy to start a business. All you have to do is say, I am a business. That's it. Of course, it's helpful if you get paid, or really you're in business when you get paid, or you're in business when you have your first expense related to the business. But you can operate a business by just saying that you are. That's how simple it is. I don't think that's the best method at all. Let's talk about why. Let's talk about some pros and cons. And I'm going to try something cool here. Try the highlighter. Okay, there's a lot of pros to this super simple method, in that you don't need a business name. You're only using your name. That's super simple, right? You don't need to apply for this thing called an employer identification number. You just use your social security number when someone says, I want to give you a check. Who do I make it out to? What's your social security number? Or your EIN stands for employer identification number. You don't need any of that stuff. Okay, that's an advantage. It's very easy, very quick. Like I said, you just stand in front of the mirror and you're in business. But it's got problems. It's got a lot of problems. You don't have a separate company name, and somehow what do you put on the title page of the book when you want to put a publishing company? You don't look legitimate. If you don't form a separate publishing company, you look like the self-publisher who didn't want to do anything more. It just screams like self-publisher, didn't want to do anything. And I think actually a big con is using your social security number. I don't want you to use your social security number. I don't want you to give it out to anybody. There's some identity concerns there, right? Identity theft is rampant, and the more we give out our social security number, when we have to, like if you want to get paid by anybody, royalties, they're going to request your social security number. You instead want to give them this number, your employer identification number instead. It keeps your social security number private. So although the super simple way you can start a business is not having a separate business name, I think the cons of that super simple method far outweigh these advantages of being easy and quick. Okay, now I'm going to tell you, I tried this. I do think though that what I'm going to help you do is still pretty easy. Maybe not as quick as standing in front of a mirror, but there's only a couple of steps to get you up and running pretty quickly, pretty successfully. Okay, let's go on. There we go. Step number one, to forming your own publishing company, publishing business, I'll use those words interchangeably, business and company, for the self-published author, is to decide on your business structure. I'm going to show you a picture of the different kinds of business structures, but here's my tip. You're probably going to be a sole proprietorship. If you want to, you can change that business structure later. I'll talk about that near the end of this webinar. But I would say probably 99% of the authors out there are sole proprietorships. The only ones who might not be sole proprietorships might be because they have formed more than just a self-published author. They are publishing other authors. They really are running a publishing company. They might want to consider corporate status, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But it's pretty easy for authors, the self-published author, to pick their business structure. They're sole proprietors. Okay, that was easy, right? Here are your choices. In the United States, you can pick one of three business structures: sole proprietorship, partnership, or corporation. I already mentioned the two, sole proprietorship and corporation. Sole proprietorship, I want you to think of what it is it's a one person, one individual owns the business. I think of it like a single family home, right? So it's very common. Probably, I think something like 80% of businesses in the United States are sole proprietorships. Very simple business model, very easy to understand, very easy to start. Like I said, you can just start with your name and your social security number, which you already have, both of those things. Partnerships would be more than one owner in a business, and rarely do authors or self-published authors form partnerships. It's a little bit like living in a duplex, sometimes too close for comfort. Now, I know co-authors, people who co-author books, and I have asked them many times over, when you co-authored this book, did you form a business partnership? And they know what I mean. Business partnership. You might have a working partnership, if you will. And all of them have said to me, no. Me and my co-author and I both kept our separate sole proprietorship businesses. We just had a contract that said on this project we're working together. And then, of course, the contract said what the royalty split would be. They did not form a business partnership. And the reason is, when you form a partnership, I say it's like being married, but you're not in love, because that other partner in your partnership can obligate you to debts of the business that you could end up being liable for. It's just like being married. Many good things about partnerships, many good things about marriage, but in terms of the legalities, they are fraught with problems. So I always discourage business partnerships. The only time I think they might work is among professionals like law firms, doctors' offices, and sometimes accounting firms are partnerships, but that's because they hire lawyers and accountants to get the partnership set up correctly. We'll talk more about corporations as we get further in the webinar. I don't think that's something you would set up at the beginning of your publishing business. There's no need to. It's overly complex. Partnerships, or corporations, excuse me, are kind of like an apartment building. Multiple owners, they're called shareholders. It's just a level of complication in terms of the legal complication of it and the tax complication of it that I just don't think most authors, and even self-published authors who are forming a publishing company, need. So, for example, my business, which is Carol Topp, CPA, LLC. I'll talk more about LLC status later, because it's not anything you have to do right away. It's one of those you can do later. I am a sole proprietorship. I always have been a sole proprietorship. I always will be. I don't need the corporate status to do what I do. I work with other people, but I am not formed a partnership with them. I don't even form a business partnership with my publisher. Nope. She actually is a corporation, but I am a sole proprietor. And I know you might have a lot of questions about that, so write them down. Brian will keep track of them, and we'll answer them when we take a little break. So step number 1 was pick your form of business structure, and I said probably sole proprietorship. Number 2, choose a name. Pick a name for your publishing business. This is kind of the fun part. I tried to come up with names. I probably spent several months thinking of names, variations on my name, my initials, whatever. You'll see people pick their dog's name, their kid's names, their city name, their street name, whatever. I picked Ambassador Publishing. I did a little bit of research to see if it was used in the state that I live in, which is Ohio. Ambassador Press, which was what I wanted, was used, so I had to go with Ambassador Publishing. And I filed a doing business as name registration. In Ohio, it's called a fictitious name registration. Anytime you do business in a name other than your own, you have to file that registration with your state or with your county. Depends on the state, whether it's at the state level. In Ohio, it's at the state level. A lot of times it's at the county level. How do you know? Well, here's my tip. Go to dbafilingonline.com. Look for the DBA by state. And they will have DBA, again, stands for doing business as your business name. And you can find out what your state requirements are there. And how this comes into play is I had someone write a check to Ambassador Publishing. Told you that was the name of my publishing company. And well, the reason I call it Ambassador Publishing is because I feel like I'm an ambassador between the government, the IRS, or business laws, and you, the citizens of the United States. I work to interpret and to help you understand, like an ambassador does, a different culture, the culture of taxes in the IRS. Okay, so anyway, that's why I call myself Ambassador Publishing. So I went to the bank, and someone had written out a check to Ambassador Publishing, and the teller there was brand new, and he sees that I have this check for Ambassador Publishing, but I want to deposit it into my bank account. My bank account is called Topp CPA LLC, and he says, "Can you do this? Are you allowed to put this? What is this Ambassador Publishing? It looks like I'm trying to do something illegal, right? Put a check made out to Ambassador Publishing into a different account." And I said, "No, that's one of my DBAs." And he said, "What's a DBA?" Oh dear, they haven't trained this teller very well. He calls over the manager. The manager starts telling me, "Well, you have to have a separate bank account for all of your different business names." And then I do what I call pulling my CPA card. I said, "Well, no, I don't. I'm a CPA, and I know that I don't have to have different bank accounts for my different business names. I want all my businesses, whether I'm doing a tax return for you or whether I'm getting royalties for my books, I want it all to go in the same checking account. I just have different business names. I don't have to set up different checking accounts." And I said it with enough confidence to believe me. And I said, "I have my name registered with the state." She said, "Oh, you do? Uh-huh. Can you bring in those forms?" And so I brought in a copy of what you see here. This. Whoops, I don't know if that's working. Oops, sorry. Sorry, I'm playing a little bit here. Wrong thing. Wrong way. Go back. Oh, it's not working. Oops. I'm stuck. Hang on a sec. Sorry, folks. Go back. Okay, sorry. Back to my story. So anyway, I showed her this form to say I have a fictitious name. I actually have 2 fictitious name registrations just because I wanted people to write checks to different aspects of my business. Okay, enough on DBAs. That was step number 2. I'm not doing very well with that pointer tool, Brian. I'll figure it out next slide maybe. Okay, step number 3 is to get an employer identification number called an EIN. You can get them for free from the IRS. irs.gov. Go to irs.gov, up in the corner, type in EIN, or type in the form that the IRS uses it's called Form SS-4. You apply online for it. You could mail it in, but that takes longer. You used to be able to do it by phone, but the IRS has cut staff. So you do it online. I do recommend you look at the SS-4 form before you go online, just so you know what they're going to ask, okay? And here's what happens. You end up getting this number almost instantly, okay? You only need one of these employer identification numbers for any and all sole proprietorships that you as that individual open. So if I, Carol Topp, tried to go to the IRS.gov right now and apply for another employer identification number, they'd say, you can't open another one. You already got one. If I formed a corporation, I could get a different EIN. But as a sole proprietor, I only get one employer identification number. So I don't put a business name on that application. I didn't put Ambassador Publishing on my EIN application. I only put my name. Got that? Because I can open Ambassador Publishing. I could open a business doing daycare. I could open a business, whatever, designing fashions. I never would. But those are just examples of what I'm saying. But you only need that one employer identification number for all the sole proprietorships you will ever open. What you do need is to keep those sole proprietorships separate, and that's where you want different DBAs doing business as name registrations. Whether you throw them all in one checking account or keep them together like I do, that is completely up to you. Okay, so that was step 3, get an employer identification number. Step 4, UGH, sales tax registration. If you are going to be selling your books, you will probably need to collect sales tax. I'm going to talk a little bit more about sales tax further on in the webinar. And if you really want to know more about sales tax, then you probably need to view the video, the webinar I did with for apps on taxes for writers. Sales tax registration in your state might be known as a vendor's license. It might be called a reseller's permit. It goes by several different names depending upon the state. How do you know? Here's my other tip. Go to blog.taxjar.com and then somewhere in there, or just Google taxjar.com, how to register for sales tax permits, and they will have it done by state. So you will know what you need to do in each of your states. Here, for example, is Kentucky's registration application. I just pulled that one up. I think I went to Kentucky, and even if you go into another state and sell books, frequently have to collect sales tax in that state. That's what I'll talk about later. And register and collect sales tax and pay it to the various states. So typically as an author, I get this asked a lot, so I'll answer it now. Do I need a business license? Do I need a license to operate my publishing business? Usually the answer is no, because the publishing business, or definitely being an author, is not regulated at any level. At the state level or at the federal level. No regulations. Being an accountant, yes, that's regulated. A CPA, being a CPA rather, not an accountant. Being a CPA, certified public accountant. I do have a license. I have a license to practice accounting. So I need a license to be a CPA. I don't need a license to be an author. What I did need though, was a vendor's license, meaning I am selling something. I'm selling my books. Okay. I have one client, an author, who does not sell his books directly himself. He only writes ebooks. Kindle is the only way he sells his ebooks. Maybe he does it through Nook and the other ebooks, but he does not sell them himself. He avoids step 4 altogether. Something to think about. Makes his life simple for him. I think it's time, if there are questions, Brian, to take a look.
Sure. Yes, sir. It's a couple of them came in before you already answered them. The one came in about the DBA and also how to get an EIN. And you'll be talking about LLCs later?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Yep, I will talk about them later.
That's great, because I wish I'd learned this years ago. I started out with a C Corp and then went to an S Corp and to partnership, and then now I have an LLC. So.
You've done everything.
Yeah. Why didn't you tell me that 20 years ago?
Well, yeah, okay.
Here's a question from,
Sorry.
From Balaka. I'm trying to open an account with kdpamazon.com, and it's asking me if I wanted to be a sole proprietor or LLC. Can I start as a sole proprietor and then later change to LLC?
Yes, you don't change. You add on LLC status to your sole proprietorship. That's what I did. So it sounds like I'm being real picky about words there, but I'm being picky. Well, first of all, we're authors. We're picky about words, right? But you add on the LLC status to your sole proprietorship. You remain a sole proprietorship. I operated as a sole proprietorship for 3 years before I decided to add on LLC status to my sole proprietorship.
Okay.
So yes, you can wait. You can do it later. That's what we'll talk about in a little bit. Coming up pretty quickly, actually.
Okay.
You know, what do you need LLC status? Why? And when should I add it on to my sole proprietorship?
Okay. Here's one from Marcia. What would the difference be between Author X LLC and X Publishing? Right.
Yeah, that's a really good question. You know, so I think I told you I am Carol Topp CPA LLC. Well, that's because CPAs a lot of times use their name in their business title. Authors don't so much. I think it lends more credibility that you are a legitimate business if you use that publishing company name. Okay, if I open the front of a book and I look at the title page, I see the author is Susie Cook. If I see it Susie Cook Publications LLC or Susie Cook Publications, what do I think? Unfortunately, self-publishing is gaining in respect, but we still don't have all the respect because there are so many kind of badly run or badly done self-published books out there. So unfortunately, it doesn't give you the air of respectability that you want when it's just Susie Cook Publications.
Okay, so she asked again, so it's basically author company, not necessarily just X Publishing.
I'm sorry. Okay, wait, ask your question again. Maybe I didn't answer.
There's a follow-up from Marcia. So it's basically author company, not necessarily just X Publishing.
I don't understand. Do you understand what she's asking, Brian? Author company?
Author quote company, not necessarily just X Publishing. Okay, Marcia, if you could just...
You can use, if I'm understanding her right, when she says author company, is she talking about Susie Cook Company? I'm using Susie Cook as the author's name versus like I am Ambassador Publishing as opposed to Carol Topp Publishing. I try to use my, get away from using my personal name in my publishing company because I want the different entity, because I think it lends more respect.
Yeah, she said
I don't know if I'm answering her question. I'm sorry, Marcia.
She followed up, not two separate entities, just one for everything. If that helps, does that clarify?
Yeah. It really depends on how closely related all your businesses are. So that's a really good question. That kind of leads into something I didn't have a slide on. So I've been asked by authors, you know, one of them said, oh, I couldn't believe this. I meet authors at authors conferences. And she said, I just put my writing business underneath my husband's business. Oh, what does your husband do? Oh, he's a construction, he builds, houses. Don't put your writing under your husband's construction business. Those are two very different businesses. It would just muddle the record keeping, muddles the IRS completely. Now if the IRS wants to audit you, you've just opened them up to looking at everything your husband does too. So anyway, if you're running very different businesses, meaning different customers, different sources of income, different audiences, have then different businesses and different checking accounts. As a sole proprietor, same employer identification number, remember that, but different business names. My writing is so related to me being an accountant that I've put everything under one business, one checking account. I told you I have different doing business as names. I have Ambassador Publishing. That's the publishing. I have Carol Topp CPA. That's the tax stuff. Then I have one called Homeschool CPA. That's where I deal with a lot of homeschool clients. Okay. So I have different. Actually, I have another one. I guess I have 3. Micro Business for Teens. That's another book series I wrote because I thought that might be a different business. Anyway, I can get checks written to any of those. Okay. You might file different Schedule Cs if you have a dog walking business and a publishing business and a beauty parlor. Okay, you might file different Schedule Cs. That's the tax return. You might have different doing business as. You might have different checking accounts. Okay, just to keep things clear, keep your businesses separated. Does that help?
Yeah.
That was a long answer. Sometimes short questions have long answers.
A few of these may be answered later, but we'll just go through them. Balak
Okay.
had another question. If I am planning to sell only through Kindle, do I need so if I'm planning to only sell through Kindle, I don't need a license, right?
I believe that is correct. Yeah, my client who only sells through Kindle does not need a business license. He doesn't need a sales tax license. He doesn't need a professional license to be an author. No.
Okay. It's from Jacqueline. I have a sole proprietorship, but plan to move within my state. Will I need to dissolve my business and then reopen it when I move,
No.
since I'm registered
No.
in my home county?
You might need to re-register the doing business as name in the new county. You're not closing down your business, not in the eyes of the IRS or anything. No, you might just need to re-register your name in your new county. That's it.
Okay.
Don't close down your business. Don't close down your check. Well, you might move banks, but no, in terms of the business, still run the business. Yeah.
Okay. Here's one from Mary. I've heard some scary words and don't know what they mean. Commingled funds and corporate veil.
Ooh, she's been reading good stuff. Yeah, we'll talk about that at the LLC, but commingling funds, I strongly encourage you, I think I'm going to cover this in a few minutes, to set up a separate checking account. As a sole proprietor, it's not absolutely necessary, but if you are an LLC, if you add LLC status to your sole proprietorship, you should set up a different checking account to separate the business from your personal life. If you're a corporation, you definitely set up a corporate checking account. That's what we call, I don't want funds to be commingled. We accountants really don't like commingling of funds because it just muddies everything. It just gets complicated. You can't tell if your business is successful if you've got, like I said, the grocery bills mixed in with your business checking account. Okay, so for clarity, both for tax preparation and for business success, you don't want to commingle funds. Okay, meaning you mix in your personal and your business stuff in the same checking account.
Okay, here's
corporate veil. We'll get to that when we talk about LLC status. Remind me.
Okay, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, that's okay. Go ahead.
This is from a different Mary. That Mary said, "Thank you." Here's a different Mary. If you only sell a limited amount of books, say a book here and there, do I have to collect sales taxes?
Yes.
That's a quick answer.
Sorry. Yes. Sorry. Yeah. Straight answer. Okay. Now I'll say it depends. If you sell your books to a tax-exempt entity, which could be many nonprofits in many states are tax-exempt, and that means schools. So if you sell your books to schools, not school children, not the parents, but to the school, frequently you can get out of collecting sales tax. The other way you get out of collecting sales tax is if you sell to a wholesaler, to the bookstore, to the catalog, or something like that, and that person in turn will resell it. So I sell my books to several resellers. If I sold them to Amazon, Amazon takes, what is it now, 50, 55%? Resellers will want you to sell your book at a deep discount because then they want to make their profit. So when I sell my books to a reseller, whether that's a bookstore or another business, or my books, Micro Business for Teens, for example, are carried by this fun store that's over in the Mall of America called J.M. Kremp's Adventures for Boys. It's a store that sells stuff that boys would love, and they carry my books. When I sell my books to them, to J.M. Kremp's, I don't collect sales tax. When J.M. Kremp's sells the book to the final purchaser, they have to collect sales tax. Okay, another long answer to a short question. Sorry.
I have a quick comment from Doug. He said, be sure to get the buyer's tax exempt number. Just as a...
Yeah, good point. If they say, I'm tax exempt because I'm a nonprofit, or I am a reseller, or I am a school, you say, hey, can I have a sales tax permit? Yeah. Just to make sure. Right. Yep, he's right.
Yeah, my first C Corp was a nonprofit. That was a joke.
Yeah.
It took a couple of years to make a profit.
I know, nonprofit's not the right word because you can't make a profit as a nonprofit.
Here's one from Cindy. Can you put different imprints under the same sole proprietorship?
Yes. If ever I wanted to start a different kind of writing and I didn't want it under Ambassador Publishing, I was going, say I wanted to write fiction and I wanted it under something else, certainly I can have a different imprint. I might file another doing business as name registration for that new imprint. That'd be a very good idea, actually. Okay. But yes, you can.
Okay. People are getting a lot of thank yous here for your information.
You're welcome. Happy to help.
It's from Michelle. This is the last one for now, Carol. But
okay.
For, Michelle, yep. I have a sole proprietorship LLC publishing company, and when I registered, they asked me my DBA name. I put the full name, but I'd like to shorten it to be able to use both names in business. Would I file a DBA for both names? And you list those here. I love to read, love to write publishing.
That's really a good question, and I don't want to answer that because it might depend on your state laws or your county laws, wherever you had to register that. And I think the general rule of thumb is if it's clearly recognizable who owns it, even the short name of the longer name, if that's still clear to the average consumer, then you probably don't need to register. Like, for example, I told you my name is, I think it's actually officially Carol L. Topp CPA LLC. Well, if I just put Carol Topp CPA, that's pretty clear still, right? Even though it's a shortened version. But if you're going to go with an acronym, KFC instead of Kentucky Fried Chicken, yeah, you got to get a DBA for KFC. That make sense?
It does.
Everything and here's the thing. Here's the reason. If you think about the reason this is done, it helps understand the law. The reason we have to file DBAs is because if your business does something wrong, I, as the consumer, as the customer, have the right to know who owns this business. So basically, I can sue you. So we as that's a consumer protection kind of thing. So as a consumer, as a customer, we need to always be able to go to our state or our county and say, who owns this business? I want to sue that individual. Okay. Now, hopefully you're never sued, right? But that's why it's there. It's because we as customers and consumers always need to know, and the government needs to know who owns this thing. We don't want anybody to hide good and bad people. Okay.
That's great. Thank you very much.
All right. All right. We ready to go on?
Wonderful. Thank you from Michelle.
Oh, you're welcome. We ready to go on to what you can save for later. So remember, the first things were that deciding the business entity, picking a name, getting employer identification number. I forgot number 4. Sales tax. Okay. Okay. What you can do later, like the next week. No, even many months out on some of these things. Banking, we'll talk about that. Record keeping, yeah, I know that's like not anything any author wants to ever hear about. Followed closely by taxes, the other thing you don't want to hear about. I already touched a little bit on out-of-state sales. We're going to touch a little bit more on that. LLC status, that seems to be popular. We'll talk about that. And finally, if you want to get to the point where you want to publish other people, I have some just advice at a fairly high level of what you might want to think about before you undertake that. Okay, and of course we're going to take another break halfway through. I think we're going to get to taxes. Take a little break for more questions. Okay, I think I already said this, but I really encourage you to set a separate checking account, and if you use PayPal, very popular way to be paid, a separate PayPal account. PayPal is really, just think of it as a checking account. I had a tax client once. She came to me. She was actually doing graphic printing, screen printing, self-printing, whatever they call it. And she was saying, okay, I have this business and that business, and then I have my PayPal business. Like, your PayPal business? What? And she thought of it as a separate business, but PayPal is really just an electronic checking account. That's all it is. You receive money, you can spend money, called a checking account. So when you set up a business, set up a separate PayPal account for your business, separate from if you have a personal one, okay? Set up a separate checking account. Now, if you don't, you start with maybe money from your personal life. I call it seed money. Roll it in to your checking account, make it a nice round dollar amount so you remember, oh yeah, I seeded this with $100, $500, $1,000 or whatever. When your business is profitable, you could take that money back out and put it into your personal account again. leaving only what is left in the business account. Hopefully it's profit, right? When you want to take money out of your business checking account, it's called an owner's draw, meaning you are the owner and you are drawing money out of that business account, and you usually move it over to your personal account. I do not like you to just write personal expenses out of your business checking account. Again, I think I've already said this like 3 times. We CPAs, we hate that because you're going to pay me at tax time to disentangle your personal life from your business life, because I can only deduct your business expenses. I had a tax client once. He thought he was doing a great job. He organized all his receipts by month. That didn't help. I need it by category for the tax form. He did it by month. And then I could see from his bank statements, in his business account, he was paying the vet, he was going to the grocery store, he was paying his kid's pediatrician bills, because it was more convenient for him just to whip out his business debit card because he knew there was money there, instead of taking the time to make a owner's draw, move it into his personal account, and spend his personal expenses out of his personal account. So, but please do that. Take that owner's draw. By the way, an owner's draw is not a tax deduction. It is really merely moving money from your business account to your personal life. It doesn't get recorded on your tax return anywhere. You also don't consider this a paycheck to yourself. It's really not. I know some sole proprietors like to think of themselves as getting a paycheck from their business, and I don't like you thinking that way, because you don't get a paycheck from your business. You might draw money. You may take an owner's draw of some of the money in your business account to move to your personal, but that's not a paycheck like wages. You don't give yourself a W-2 if you're a sole proprietorship. All of the profit is your paycheck, if you will. All of the profit is what you report on your tax return. Record keeping. I know you hate record keeping. I know you do. I hate it. I'm a CPA. I do it, but it's tedious. I'd rather do more interesting things. But to try to make record keeping a bit easier, I do offer a free spreadsheet. I worked this up because one of my author friends just hated the idea of keeping records. And I said, let me make you a spreadsheet. And then I thought, well, what the heck? Why don't I share it with other people? So you go over to taxesforwriters.com. Right there on the home page, it says, hate bookkeeping? Use this. And so I've got a couple of my clients that are using this. They're finding it just a very easy way to record their expenses. And at the end, it all rolls up to one summary spreadsheet. They print that out and give it to me, and I find it very easy to prepare their tax returns that way. They also keep track of what their income is, keep track of their mileage on that. Yeah, no complaints. So there's a free spreadsheet to help. If you're relatively uncomplicated, this works pretty well. The author that my client that uses it, I think he has about 5 books he's written, most of his income, a few sales that he makes, and of course his royalties from his publisher. So he keeps track of his inventory pretty easily. If you get to the point, though, where you're managing quite a bit of inventory or income from many sources, or if you're a self-published author and maybe like a freelance writer or an editor, or doing things like that, and you need to invoice your client, so like I do, I invoice clients, you might want to consider accounting software. QuickBooks is the granddaddy. It's a great program. I use it, but it can be quite complex because it is designed for all kinds of businesses. New Cash, which is spelled GNU for New Cash, is similar to QuickBooks. It's open source, so it's free. But if you don't like QuickBooks, you're not going to like New Cash. Or if you find it complicated, there is no support for New Cash because it's just a bunch of what they call open source people who just decided they wanted to build accounting software and did it, and they make it look like QuickBooks. But there is something I've been recommending more frequently. It's called Wave Accounting. You can find it at Wave Apps, apps.com. It's free. It's online completely, so it's cloud-based accounting software. They have ads. That's how they pay for it, and add-ons. Like if you pay employees, you pay more for their employee add-on. But anyway, I didn't find the ads too annoying. There are other software packages out there, FreshBooks, but and GoDaddy accounting, they don't track inventory. And if you are selling your own books, you need to track inventory. QuickBooks, Wave accounting, it's not great at tracking inventory, to be perfectly honest. So you can do, like I said, my client does, just use a straight up spreadsheet. Or if you get a little more complicated and you have to manage quite a bit of inventory, you might have to consider some of the other accounting software packages out there, like QuickBooks, things like that. So I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on software record keeping, but those are just some high-level tips for you there. All right, let's get into a little more of the nitty-gritty. And again, I did a whole hour-and-a-half long webinar, didn't we, Brian, on taxes? So this is going to be quick. A sole proprietor uses what's called a Schedule C, which is this. It's actually a two-page form as part of their 1040, their individual tax return. Okay. Schedule C is called profit or loss from business for sole proprietorship. This is where you use your income from your book sales, royalties, whatever else that business income has brought in, and then you list all your expenses, separated by categories. I'm not going to go into that because that's just a whole webinar by itself, because there's a lot of different kinds of expenses. And you know what? Here's the problem with the Schedule C. It's one form designed for all sole proprietorships. Yikes. So there's going to be a lot of things on that form that do not apply to you. Like, for example, depletion. Depletion means like when you're depleting, you know, a gas reserve of the gas and oil or something like that. Crazy, right? Not very many sole proprietorships have depletion. Well, you're going to have things like office expenses, probably contract labor. That means when you hire somebody like an editor to edit your book, or cover designer. You're probably going to have, I don't know, advertising. Those are probably the biggies. If you are selling your own book, you're going to have what's called cost of goods sold, which is basically how you get to deduct the fact that you bought books to resell them, and you get to deduct the purchase price of the books. Basically, I wrote a whole book to try to cover taxes for writers. It's called Business Tips and Taxes for Writers. But I just did want to let you know at a high level that sole proprietors use this Schedule C. I touched on this before, but I said basically if you run different businesses, you might have different Schedule Cs, okay? And a married couple, if he has his business, and I've done tax returns for a married couple where he has his business, he has his Schedule C with his business name. She has a different business. She has her Schedule C, which is why it just drove me crazy when that one lady at a writers conference told me she just added her author business, and she was selling to schools. I mean, she was not, you know, small. She was selling to schools and things like that, and she just added it to her husband's business. No, you're a different business. You're going to use a different code up in the corner to describe your business. It probably has a different name, different audience, different types of income. So there are a bunch of tax deductions for writers. I touched on a few of them. Advertising, mileage, office expenses are usually the most popular. Professional development, if you go to a conference. If you read books to do research, you get to deduct the books. Your book publishing, I'm so sorry. I forgot to turn off my cell phone. I'm so sorry. Book publishing expenses. There's no line item for that, so you're going to have to figure out where does that go. Book publishing expenses might be things like I hired an editor. That would go under what? Contract labor. You contracted with someone for their labor. Okay. A lot of times this is where professionals like me who do lots of tax returns get pretty good at knowing where to classify or how to categorize the different expenses that authors have. Okay. Your research expenses are also tax deductible. Isn't that good? So if you're doing research, be careful if you're taking trips to exotic places. You can keep it reasonable, okay, folks? You know, you don't have to do your research in Hawaii, you know, but unless you're doing a book on, you know, Hawaiian travel or the history of Hawaii, okay? So just be reasonable when it comes to taking some of these deductions. I've touched on this before, contract labor. Let me talk about it a little bit more. If you do hire someone an individual, okay, and like I said, to do cover design, editors are the common ones, and you pay them more than $600 in a calendar year, you need to send that contractor a form called a 1099 miscellaneous. To prepare the 1099 miscellaneous. I sit there online, I type in their name, their social security number, or their employer identification number if they gave it to me, their business name if they gave that to me, how much I paid them in the year. A copy goes to them, a copy goes to the IRS if you have paid them more than $600 in a calendar year. Okay, something to know about. You might get 1099 miscellaneouses if you have done editing or things like that. I get them when I, as for my CPA services, have charged someone more than $600, they have to give me a 1099 miscellaneous. It's kind of like a W-2 for independent contractors. I have a short ebook that you can get over at taxesforwriters.com, and it goes into more detail about common tax deductions for writers. Okay, so I think it's, I can't remember how long it is. It's a pretty short ebook, maybe 15 pages max. And all it costs is your email address. It's how you sign up for my newsletter. I'm not going to inundate you with stuff on my newsletter. My newsletter is basically a collection of recent blog posts. But I find that people do seem to like the short ebook on tax deductions for writers. So there's how you can go ahead and get that. Go over to Taxes for Writers and put an email in. Okay? Any questions pop up recently, or should I keep going, Brian?
We have tons of these.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
Really a hot topic. Just in the order in which they came in from Marcia. I think I was confusing everyone with my terms, so here's what I'm trying to figure out. I'm a fiction author. I publish print and digital books. I sell on third party sites, book-related merchandise, shirts, totes, etc. I may add additional means of income, still book-related. I want one company name to use for all, which means I don't necessarily want publishing in the name.
Gotcha. Yes.
Oh, good.
Yes, you can certainly do that because you said it's all book-related. I like that. You can certainly do that. You'll find a lot of people, though, will come up with different names. If you don't like publishing in the name of your business, you don't have to use it. But it's a little hard sometimes to come up with one name that tells who you are to every customer, because you might have different customers for different services that you provide, or different, right? You got to be creative. You could be my father-in-law ran a business and he just called it Horizons Unlimited. That was it. That was the name. That could be anything, couldn't it? You can use that name if you want to. His business doesn't operate anymore, but Horizons Unlimited. Very generic name. Doesn't really tell anybody what he does, though, does it? So pros and cons. So yeah, you're gonna have to. I would recommend you noodle lots of business ideas, and if you have customers or clients, survey them, see what they think about your ideas. You might want to have more than one name, even though you're putting everything under one business. That's like me. More than one name, everything's under one business.
Okay. This was a statement from Jacqueline, but I think she just wants confirmation. I have more than one sole proprietorship and have been combining the information on Schedule C. Okay.
It depends on if they're closely related. Again, if the code at the top, you have to enter a code, a business code. What is your business? If you can enter one code and it applies to all those businesses, like I do, I put it accounting services because my book sales and my speaking is so closely related to my being an accountant. I would put it in a different Schedule C if, like I said, I ever opened a daycare or a dog walking business. So it really depends on how closely related your businesses are. Can you put them all on one Schedule C? The IRS gets the same amount of money, folks, okay, if you do your Schedule C correctly. So the IRS is not being cheated. It just helps for clarity for you to keep the businesses separate. So did I make or lose money on this business this year? Sometimes people don't know that till they prepare their tax return. Not a good way to run a business, by the way.
Okay, from Duan, can you deduct the cost of taking a creative writing course?
Yes.
Okay.
If you intend to become a creative writer, if that's your intention, if it's more than a hobby, if you really intend to go into that genre of creative writing, or if it helps you be a better writer, yes, you can deduct the cost of taking a writing course. I have. It's called professional development. Yeah.
I like this question came in when you're talking about the deductions, but what if the cover designer is overseas?
You do not usually send them a 1099 miscellaneous because that's a U.S. Tax reporting form, so they don't pay U.S. taxes when they're overseas.
Okay. We have a few 1099 questions here.
Okay.
Is a 1099 miscellaneous needed for a company you have? Okay, no, sorry, just answer that.
Okay. Overseas, yeah.
What if it's less than $600?
You do not have to send them a 1099 miscellaneous. It's their responsibility to report it to the IRS, but it's not on a burden for you to send them a 1099 miscellaneous.
Okay. From Balaka, could you give that website again to make the 1099 miscellaneous for editors?
Yeah. I think she means yearly, YEARLI, yearly.com. It used to be called, you could just Google file 1099 miscellaneous. There's several services out there. I like yearly. I think they charge $4.50 per 1099 miscellaneous that I send out. You could also go to Staples if you want to around tax time, around December and January, and buy a stack of them, but they usually sell them in packs of 25, and I don't need 25 of them. And then I have to do the mailing, and I have to type it and print it and feed it through my printer. So when I came across this online preparation services, it was wonderful, like yearly.
Okay. From Marcia, I thought the 1099 miscellaneous rule just changed and no longer required when paid via credit card or payment merchant, as they are now responsible.
It's terribly confusing, to be honest. There have been some, I think I have a blog post over at Taxes for Writers on that. It is terribly confusing. The IRS did not think through things properly when they made this new rule about if you pay somebody through a third party. Oh gosh, I really don't want to get into this because I was not going to address this tonight. That they may get a notice from that third party, like a CreateSpace or like a Kindle, that they receive their money. I can't say it's the 1099 miscellaneous has not gone away. Let me say that. And usually we use it as authors when we have hired another individual. Okay, she might be talking about when she gets her 1099 from CreateSpace or Kindle or something like that. Okay, sorry, I'm not answering the question very thoroughly, but the 1099 miscellaneous did not go away, and we're still obligated if we hire somebody, an individual, to work for us, to do contract work for us, that we have to give them that form. That's where I'm coming from tonight. Okay, you as the business owner have to give that form to somebody.
Okay, there's a last question for this break.
Okay.
I have an S, this is from Don. I have an S corp, which is somewhat related to my publishing startup. Should I put the sole proprietorship under the corp? And if so,
no.
why?
Oh no, they're different. No, they're different. You have an S corp, and that's your publishing business, right? Isn't that what he said?
Yes.
So is he starting a new sole proprietorship that's not publishing?
It doesn't
They're
say
different
just,
entities.
Yeah, just
The,
he already has
okay.
the S corp related to my publishing startup.
Okay. So you're not starting another S corp. Okay. Remember my picture? Sole proprietorship, single family home, duplexes, partnership, apartment building. He built an apartment building. S corp, small apartment building, but he built an apartment building. He built a corporation. If he wants to start a whole nother business, again, I'll compare it to like dog walking, not related at all to the S corp, fine, he can do that, no problem. But if he just wants to add more services, more sources of revenue under his S corp, that's the way to go if it's related to what the S corp does. Hard for me to answer that without knowing more particulars. And if he has an S corp, he should definitely have a CPA. And he should ask his CPA these questions.
Okay.
Because his CPA will know better. What are you doing? Where should you put this new business you want to start? As a part of this S Corp, a different S Corp, another S Corp, or a separate sole proprietorship?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is where life gets complicated, isn't it, Brian? Yeah.
It does. You're doing a great job answering these questions, though. But we'll turn it back over to you again for the last segment.
Okay, how are we doing on time? Oh, we've been talking about an hour. Wow, fabulous. Yeah. Okay. Okay, let's talk about this awful thing called Nexus, out-of-state sales. This can get kind of complicated. Now, a lot of you might just stay perfectly comfortable sitting in your home state, never leaving your state to do sales. But if you ever get invited to speak somewhere, or even if you live I live in a tri-state area. I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio. I am like 30 minutes from, 2 other states. So it's very common for me to go to other states. You have to collect sales tax when you have nexus in a state. And nexus has always been defined as a physical presence in a state, okay? Meaning, if you do not have nexus, you have no physical presence in that state, you don't have to collect sales tax on customers from customers who live in that state, okay? So I have no nexus right now. I'm sitting in Cincinnati, Ohio. I have no nexus in Texas. I have no physical presence in Texas. So if someone from Texas emails me, says I want to buy a book, fine, I'll ship them a book. They email me via PayPal, actually. I ship a book to Texas. I do not have to collect sales tax in Ohio. I do not have to collect Texas sales tax. Nothing. I don't have to collect it. That buyer in Texas, he's supposed to pay Texas sales tax. He's supposed to report it and pay it on his own. Okay. My website does not create a physical presence in Texas for now. The problem is that buyer in Texas, does he report his sales tax? Does he report on his tax return? Oh, I bought a book from Carol Topp. She didn't collect sales tax from me, so by golly, I'm going to be honest and fess up and tell the state of Texas and pay it? No, we're not doing that. It's cumbersome for us to do that. We don't do that. We being Americans. And so the states are very upset and very mad at us because we're buying things on the internet from other people in other states and not paying sales tax, and they're very angry at us. So they are trying to say that a website or an affiliate or some sales rep in a state creates nexus, and they call it click-through nexus or electronic nexus. They're trying to do some stuff. So the world of sales tax is just changing very fast and getting very complicated. And I don't like it at all. If you do travel out of state, so I did. I went to a conference. I went to Texas twice in 2015. Once to Houston, once to Dallas. Sold books at conferences in both of those cities. I had to apply for and get a transient vendor license from the state of Texas. And sometimes it's not very easy to figure out what you need to get from the state. I just got something from the state of Missouri today because I'm going to St. Louis in 3 weeks and I'm going to sell books in Missouri. And I was being a good citizen, a good taxpayer, and I filled out a Missouri special events application because I'm going to Missouri for a special event. I'm going to collect Missouri sales tax and I'm going to pay Missouri after the conference is over. And they send me a letter saying, okay, you filled out form 2643S. You need to fill out form 2643A. I'm like, shoot, I'm trying to do the right thing here, Missouri, and you're not making it easy for me to collect your sales tax and pay you. So anyway, this is the difficulty of when you go out of state, but you must do it. I was at an event at my church last month, and a woman came in as a speaker. She had a few books to sell, and I volunteered to help her sell books at the table. And she's saying, now the books are $15 each. And I said, oh, okay, and how are you going to add on Ohio sales tax? And she had just driven up from Louisville, Kentucky that day. And she looked at me like with this deer in the headlights look like, what? And I thought, okay, turn off the CPA, Carol. That's not what she wants to hear. And I said, well, yeah, you enter the state and you're supposed to collect Ohio sales tax. She did not want to hear it, so I didn't tell her anymore. And I'm not her CPA, but I want you to be aware of that. It's kind of a pain in the paper neck. It's paperwork because I once spent an hour and a half, 90 minutes online trying to figure out how to give the state of Kentucky $6. I eventually called because I was not having any luck online, and she said, "Oh, well, that's done by each county. Here's the person in the county you need to call, and she'll send you the form." Why don't you put that online? No, it's, some states are just not very helpful. So anyway, out-of-state sales, kind of a problem. I want you to also realize that selling ebooks doesn't necessarily get you out of the sales tax headache, because I think this chart might even be a little old, but those states in blue, those are all states that tax electronic books. Here in Ohio, we started, I should say the government of Ohio started taxing electronic book sales. So when I sit here in Ohio, if I sell to an Ohio customer, on my ebook or my physical book, I now have to collect sales tax on the ebook sales to customers in Ohio. Does that make sense? You can find out more about sales tax on digital products. Go to nolo.com or just Google. It's probably easier than going to this very long website I have there on the page. Just Google Nolo, which is a wonderful legal resource. They sell lots of legal books. I have several of their books, business and legal books. Nolo.com, 50 state guide internet sale tax law. Okay, so what they do is they have an explanation of all the tax laws for each of the states, which is very nice of them to compile that and put that out there for free at nolo.com. So probably something you didn't want to hear about, but it is our changing world. And the reason sales tax is more complex is because every state has different rules, and sometimes cities have sales tax, and they're changing. Like I said, as the face of sales tax changes, and you're usually dealing with very tiny dollar amounts. Like I said, I owe the state of Kentucky $6. Sometimes I only owe $40 or $50 from sales at a convention in sales tax, and I will spend over an hour trying to figure out how to give them $50. So anyway, my husband keeps telling me I need to stop traveling. Right, Brian? Didn't you and I met? Where did we meet, Brian? Out of state, I remember. Yeah. Kentucky, maybe? Yeah.
Right, Louisville. Yeah.
That's right. At a writers' conference. So anyway, I'm kind of getting a handle on it, but sometimes I just try to avoid sometimes traveling too much out of state. It's really got to be worth it, basically, in order for you to deal with the sales tax. Okay, and let me back up sales tax. I have a friend who's an author. She is not self-published. She has a publisher. Okay, and instead of selling books herself, she just says, go on Amazon and buy them, or go to my publisher's website and buy them. She does not sell books herself, partially because she is horrible at record keeping, and she knows she would just not handle it well. And she didn't want to deal with sales tax, and she didn't want to deal with the record keeping of selling her own books. Even though she gives conferences, she speaks, she just tells people, go buy my book at my publisher or Amazon. So lost sales? Yeah, probably. It's probably not an option for us as self-publishers, though, unless you're only going to sell, again, like through Amazon or through some other third-party create space, which is owned by Amazon, Kindle, something like that. Or like through Brian's services, because you're selling to the reseller and not you don't have to deal with sales tax then. Okay, shall we cover LLC status, since there have been some questions about it already, and then we'll take some more questions. I think I already told you that I am a sole proprietorship, will probably always stay a sole proprietorship, but I operated for 3 years before I added limited liability company status to my sole proprietorship. So my sole proprietorship is like a single family home. My LLC status is like a fence, like protection, okay, around the business. And what it does is exactly what it says. It limits the liability to the company or to the business. Okay, so let me break down what that means. When you hear the word liability, think lawsuit. So if someone is going to sue you, and granted, authors don't get sued very often. CPAs maybe get sued a little bit more, okay? But if someone's going to sue you, and you have limited liability company status around your business, the lawsuit is limited to the assets of the business. Okay, so for example, if someone wants to sue me, my business is an LLC, they can sue, yeah, because maybe I didn't prepare their tax return right or something and give them bad advice. I could say, fine, but your lawsuit damages, the liability will be limited to the business, meaning you're only going to get the money that's in my checking account. You can't get my retirement fund. You can't get my kids' college. You can't get my house. It limits the liability to the business. So obviously, if you're in a risky business, that's a really smart thing to set up, isn't it? It's a really good idea to put limited liability company status on your sole proprietorship so that if somebody sues you, they can't get your personal assets. It used to be, I'm talking about before like the 1980s, LLC status only became legal in all 50 states and sometime in the 1980s. Before that, in order to have this limited liability, you had to form a corporation. Remember that apartment building? You had to create a corporation. There are two types of corporations, S corporations and C corporations. C corporations are the big boys, you know, the S&P 500s. S corporations, S is part of the IRS code, but you could think of it as meaning small because they're limited to 75 shareholders. Usually S corporations are small. Sometimes one person can form an S corporation. And people used to do that because it gave them that limited liability company status. I've been hearing, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't file, you know, this kind of stuff on behalf of people. I'm a CPA, but I don't have any clients that are S corps. I have more clients that are sole proprietorships with LLC status added because it gives them many of the same legal protections that you used to have to form a corporation to get. Okay? Do you have to have LLC status? No, you don't. I was just talking to an author. She's a brand new client. She's just got a publishing contract from Macmillan. It's really cool for her. And we talked about LLC status, and I said, you probably don't need it. You're a novelist. You're not going to defame anybody. You're not going to slander anybody. You're not like an investigative journalist who might be sued, right? You're a novelist. There's very low likelihood that she will ever be sued. I doubt she would need limited liability company status for her publishing business. She's just now this week getting an employer identification number, setting up a checking account, a separate business checking account. She's not a self-publisher, so she's not even getting a different doing business as me. Okay, she just set up a different checking account to keep her business money separate from her personal life. But I don't think she needs LLC status, in my opinion. Okay. See, we'll cover one more topic, and then I think that's it, and we'll take questions. Okay, I did want to touch on if you love self-publishing so much that you would like to help others be published, you might want to start thinking about publishing other people. And you could certainly do that as a sole proprietor. You just say, I'll just start offering services to start publishing people. You know, I'll serve as your editor, I'll hire editors, cover designers, I'll walk you through the process because I know how to do it and did it myself. I actually thought about publishing someone else's book. She's a perfectionist, so she never finished the book, so I let it drop. But anyway, number one, have a contract. Hire a lawyer, and in that contract, imagine everything that can go wrong. Okay, that's a good contract. Keep track of sales and royalties. If you're not a record keeper, then you might not want to publish someone else's works because you have got to be meticulous in your record keeping of where the sales are coming from. Are they ebook sales or are they print book sales? You have got to deal with royalty payments to your authors and things like that. So either you need to be a good bookkeeper or you need to hire a good bookkeeper if you want to publish other people. And it's usually at this point you might want to consider S corporation structure instead of just the sole proprietorship. And I'm not sure if I want to go into that. There might be some tax advantages, let me say that. At the S corp level, you have other people basically bringing you money, working for you, bringing in revenue. And there might be some tax advantages to that. I say might. Okay, it's a big might. I cover corporations as a whole chapter in my book, Business Tips and Taxes for Writers. So, but roughly my rule of thumb. Here's my real rough rule of thumb. You're not going to find this, anywhere written in the IRS website or anything. But this is what CPAs sometimes use as a rule of thumb. If your income is more than $50,000 a year, and I mean your income from your business or from publishing other people, if it gets to be about $50,000 a year, and that's that one, and other people are helping bring in that revenue, more than just you. Other people are bringing in that revenue because you're publishing other people's books. That's when you might say, let's consider S corporation structure. Let's go visit a CPA, have them run some numbers, tell me what the pros and the cons are, talk to a business attorney, let's listen to him, talk about what the pros and cons are. I don't really think S corporation structure is a good idea for one person who's just publishing his own books, because you got to set up a payroll. This is where you do get a paycheck from the corporation. Okay, it's just overly complex for the self-published author, who will probably operate better as a sole proprietorship. Okay, phew. If you do want to consider publishing other people and want to hire a lawyer, here's a book you should read first. I don't know if you've ever had, Brian, have you ever had or met Helen Sedgwick?
I have not. No.
Fabulous. You need to do a webinar with her. Oh my goodness, she is so good and so smart and very easy to understand. I loved this book, Self-Publisher's Legal Handbook. Get that now. Even if you aren't considering publishing somebody else, if you're a self-publisher, get her book. It is good. It is easy to understand. I have it on my shelf. I need to write her a review on Amazon. What she does at the back is she kind of walks you through a self-publishing contract, and she talks about good, bad, good. She actually reviewed a contract I was given for someone to publish. I have self-published one of my books, and I thought about letting a publisher, a small press, take it over. She looked over the contract and she said, "No way, Carol," and she kind of blood red ink all over it, and I walked away from the contract because of her advice. So I think very highly of Helen Sedgwick and her Self-Publisher's Legal Handbook. Okay, shameless plug for my book. I think I already said I spend several chapters talking about business structures, including LLC status, S corp, but obviously more stuff on the taxes, the record keeping, inventory, and sales tax in the book. And my publisher says this summer she wants to update the book. I think it's about 4 or 5 years old now, so I might update some things about sales tax. We might also either make a separate book or add to this book and make it more appealing to bloggers who are running businesses. Their blog is a business, and we think that they probably need some tax and business advice as well. My website, I've said it a couple times, Taxes for Writers. I do phone consultations with writers, and I do virtual visits with writers groups. That's kind of fun. I'm not taking tax clients right now. I took one this year because she was local to me in Cincinnati, and she kind of begged, but I stopped taking tax clients about 3 years ago. I only take authors now, and only those that are local. So I'm not going to be your CPA for tax prep. I really want you to use a local CPA for your tax prep, because they better understand your state and local rules, especially about sales tax. But I can certainly do phone consultations at a higher level than that. So there's my contact information. You can certainly find it over at taxesforwriters.com. Carol at taxesforwriters.com is my email, and I have a Facebook page too. Kind of long. It's the title of the book, Business Tips and Taxes for Writers. Okay, last little bit of Q&A.
Sure, Brian? Very much so. A lot of this great information. Thanks so much. Does it cost money to add the LLC status?
Yes. It varies by state. This is done at your state level. It's not done at the IRS. It's done at your state. I think here in Ohio, where I live, it cost me $150 one time. And I think I have to renew my LLC status every 5 years. Can't remember if I had to pay them for that. It wasn't much if I did. Some states require you to file annually that your LLC is still in existence. I don't know. I don't know much about outside of my own state, but I think California is the worst in terms of the filing and maybe even having you pay a fee every year to have an LLC in the state of California. So if you're in California, make sure Sylvia, she might be on the line. She's a friend of mine, might be in California. She might know, but I don't know. Anyway, I just know that sometimes California can get very complicated with their rules regarding LLCs.
Okay.
And by the way, you are what is called a single member LLC. That's like saying the same thing as sole proprietorship with LLC status. Single member LLC. Okay, go ahead, Brian.
Okay. From Cindy, if you have a nexus, are the ebooks still taxed in that state?
Okay, it depends on the state. Remember, I put up that picture. Some states tax the ebooks, some don't. So I'm sitting here in Ohio. I have to charge sales tax to customers that buy my books here in Ohio. PayPal takes care of adding that on. Thank you very much, PayPal. They keep track of the zip codes and where people are from. Kindle takes care of that for me. That's how I sell ebooks, through Kindle. Okay, they take care of collecting and paying the sales tax. I use another service to sell ebooks called ClickBank. They take care of collecting and remitting the sales tax. They're like the third-party processor. So basically, I don't worry about selling ebooks or collecting sales tax on ebooks because of the systems and the providers, the distributors that I use. Does that make sense? Kindle Direct Publishing and ClickBank are the two I use to sell my ebooks.
Okay.
So there are ways to make this sales tax headache a little bit easier if you use organizations like a CreateSpace or like a Kindle that collect the sales tax and pay it for you.
Okay. If you add LLC, should you change bank account, EIN, etc.?
No, you do not change the EIN because LLC status is only a legal status granted by your state. The IRS doesn't care whether you added LLC status or not. There was a little thing, something confusing back. I'm not even going to go into that. Never mind. If you call the IRS and you say, I'm an LLC, before you could even get the words out of your mouth, they should say, I don't care. You're called a disregarded entity, meaning we disregard the fact that you're an LLC for tax purposes. Remember again the picture I put up of the single family home, duplex, and corporation? Those are the only three tax statuses the IRS understands. So no, you don't need a new EIN. You don't have to change your name. I doubt even that the bank wants a new DBA. Just adding the word LLC at the end does not really change your name.
Okay. From Michelle, do my authors need to fill out a W-9?
Yes. W-9 is a form that you don't have to send to the IRS. It's an IRS form. You can get it online. And it's the form you give to anybody you hire, anybody that you're going to pay, preferably before you pay them. So I hired a virtual assistant, and he was a teenager. But before I gave him his first paycheck, I said, Jonah, I want a W-9 from you. And he had to give me his legal name, his address, and either his social security number or his employer identification number. So it's kind of like the official legal way to collect someone's legal name, address, and tax ID number, either their social security number or EIN. And I really recommend that you get that from them before you pay them. It's kind of like you're signaling, if I pay you more than $600, I'm reporting it to the IRS, and we're gonna operate our business above board by collecting your legal name and your number. If they don't want to give it to you, you don't want to do business with that person.
From Mary, if you don't make much money from your self-published book but have a lot of business expenses, should you still fill out a Schedule C?
Yes. I'm not going to go into it right now because Brian and I did another whole webinar where we talked about hobby writing. So you might want to read up about hobby writing. Am I really a hobby writer, or do I really have profit motives? And it's kind of hard to discern that. It's kind of hard for the IRS to discern that. So they have like 9-factor test or something to tell if you're a professional or business or a hobbyist. But I think you probably should consider yourself a business if you have any income. you have more expenses than income. Okay, that looks a little fishy if it keeps going for several years. But if you can justify all those expenses, you know, and if you do have the intention of someday making a profit, yeah, then you're entitled to deduct those expenses against, you know, the income that you brought in. I'd say be reasonable. Let's not set off any red flags. You know, if you have $10,000 of expenses and $100 of income, I'd say, whoa, what's going on here? You know, and the IRS might get suspicious too. So, you know, be reasonable. And why are you spending $10,000 if you're only making 100? That sounds fishy, right? So let's see what we can do to spend less and make more.
And what I can do is send the link to that recording, the webinar we did on taxes, if it's okay with you. I'll send that link to everyone.
Yeah.
That might save some question answering here. Still a lot more questions, but we're starting to run out of time.
Okay, whoops, yeah, we are.
From Doug, a nice compliment to you. I searched the Denver area for a CPA who was familiar with taxes for writers. Didn't have much luck. I ended up picking a CPA and having him visit Carol's site so he could do my taxes.
Yeah, you can buy my book too. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, good for you.
From Katrina, do we mail the I-9 to IRS or do we just use the info while filing taxes?
Exactly. The W-9, where you collect someone's name and EIN number, is just for your purposes. You don't send it to the IRS. It's just your legal, it's your formal official way to collect someone's name and employer identification number.
Okay. From Balaka, if you are selling ebooks through Kindle, you have no control on who buys your books. Does this relate to out-of-state sales issues?
Yeah, it does, meaning Kindle takes care of it. They know who bought your book. That's the biggest disadvantage to Kindle and even Amazon. I don't know who's buying my book. I can't add their name to my email list. I don't know what states. Kindle shows you what states you're selling in, but are we going to keep going? I just got something popped up on the screen, Brian. Okay. Yeah, but Kindle takes care of the sales tax. So there you go. That's nice.
Just want to get that plug in before we end up here.
You want to do that? Go ahead.
No, that's all right. I'll just put that up on there. I'd like to get these questions answered. We only have a couple of minutes, though.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Katrina, making a 1099 insert for the contractors. I'm not sure what that means. How about for Melanie? I'm just rethinking. Can PayPal calculate sales tax for me if that's the only payment option I have for shipping books?
Yeah, and you have to go into your PayPal setup and tell it what states you want it to collect the sales tax. And yes, they collect it, and they know they're pretty sophisticated, I guess. But yes, they will calculate the sales tax, charge it to your customer, take care of that for you. I think I'm speaking correctly. I hope I am. But yeah, go into PayPal, start Googling PayPal sales tax. What do you do for me, PayPal? How do I set it up? Yep. Actually, I think they collect it, but I think you have to remit it because you get paid the sales tax. That's it. That's what I'm thinking. Yes.
Here's our last one from Balaka again. Before you close today, it will be great if you have time to review. Is DBA kind of the same as having different imprints?
Yes, I'd say if you have imprints, you're doing business as that imprint. I guess you could say one of my imprints was Ambassador Publishing, but if I wanted to start another imprint, like I said, for works of fiction or something like that, yeah, you're doing business as another name. And in this case, we're talking about an imprint. Yeah, I'd say an imprint are really doing business as names.
Okay. Getting a lot of thank yous and great webinar and great information. So thank you, Carol, very much.
It went fast, didn't it?
Excellent information. Oh, it was great. It was really a lot of questions and good attendance.
Yeah, sorry I can't get to them all.
Great information. So, but I want to thank you very much. I really appreciate taking your time out of your busy tax season to do this.
You're welcome. Yeah, I'm happy to help.
Okay.
I needed a break from taxes anyway.
Okay. Okay, everyone. I will get the link to the recording to you tomorrow.